Okay. Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode. The title is Nature's Walk. And so, a grand question is being asked. Is existence simulated experientially? Is existence simulated experientially? What is the value of the various species and creatures that are moving and have become animate? For me, there is something surreal about reality, that when we reverse engineer into its origin or wondering how it came to be, we see it wasn't the effort of one system of intelligence. It was an effort of many vast systems of intelligence, as if our DNAs have built our civilization from the ground up. Now, I don't know if this is a baby falcon or baby eagle or what. But there was something that when you look at nature, you find in innocence the same sort of innocence that you find in young children. Imagine yourself when you were a kid, how many things you didn't know, but how many rooms you still walked in. There's an effort that I feel its only direction is experiential, and it's as if we are first creatures that build ourselves as experiential fields. I feel we are born into a field, then we are born in the field as a sort of shape. You know, this concept of existence being simulated, it has been approached in different times. In ancient times, people shouted, mystics shouted, is life a dream? You know, should I renounce materiality for um, uh, portals to the ever present? You know, and there were, in the modern times, we have people, you know, the likes of Elon Musk, who he was asked once, and he said there's 1 billionth of a chance that this world of ours is a simulation. And the explanation for it would be when you look at gaming technology, it has been becoming more advanced, exponentially growing. From Pong, we've come to games of that resemble more of life, and even moving on to virtual reality. And so it's this idea that if we reach a point where our games, the virtual realities, the cyberspace culture gets so sophisticated that we suddenly begin to lose a sight of what is real and unreal. So the thing about you living in an unreal way is that after a while you will forget what reality meant. Anything really, you know, that means throughout the years as I've been more focused on these talks, there's been other things that I used to be focused on which have kind of like slowly gone into the subconscious in the background of the mind. Because I kind of sat down and I asked myself. And so just to finish that idea of the gaming thing is that we create a video game that is indistinguishable from reality, and when it's indistinguishable from reality, we suddenly, life becomes more of a simulation. That means right now me and you are wondering, okay, is sensory perception the only thing that's here? But there may be a chance that the future generations, like your great 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 grandson, for example, is going to be lost in a simulation. They're not going to know if digital reality is real or if the absence of it. You see, the old world gets forgotten in the construction projects of the new world. That means in many moments of my life, there had to be an opportunity cost. There had to be a sort of sacrifice of an inner emotion or feeling to enter the new and suddenly arise to a new archetype. Most people fear confrontation, they fear engagement. And let me tell you why. Because there is a lot of uncertainty in regards to a human being knowing if their inner realm is projected properly. So here's the thing. Right now, I can see a situation and I can have an opinion on that situation of acting in a certain way in that situation. Okay? But now, that sort of certainty from the external reality that, all right, if I try this inner, it's like my eyes are seeing the world and the world is also being in a certain way. So if my eyes potentially are inaccurately perceiving the external realm, there's a risk. There's a risk. We are creatures that, whether we like it or not, our psychologies, were wielded in the furnaces of chaos and order. We have been afraid and we have also loved, you know? And some people have feared love and some people have loved fear. For me, nature's walk is a very poetic analysis of all that's occurring in existence. Because if I ask you what is nature, you will notice nature is where you came from. So I found it so strange that I opened my eyes in an urban environment, and I didn't feel it as strange at first. Let me tell you, no child has a complaint of the world they find themselves in. Really, you can't complain about awareness. You only can complain about the self in the awareness or how the world is in the awareness. If you notice, you can't really have an opinion on your true self because you're being it, really. Do you know? Or when I tell people that, listen, we're creatures, our minds are set into motion. I want you to imagine that right now, what you think of yourself, how you perceive your psychology and the psychology of others in your world, all of this is literally like a billiard ball thrown on a billiard table. It's something set into motion. And what is set into motion can come to a stasis, can suddenly stop. Right? So if you pay attention to really what meditation is, it's like the human being is living at a certain velocity. Like life has a certain speed, you're running to survive. At the same time, you're running towards a direction to survive. Do you know, right now our species, believe it or not, the currency that's very powerful now is it's like money. It's like actual money, colored paper. But I'm telling you, in the future, the greatest form of currency would be the expression of the human mind. So can you imagine a civilization where based on your skill, there is interactions being done? So that means the civilization doesn't just acknowledge you for what you've done openly. You see, the mind is the most valuable resource. There's no greater human resource than the mind. So, welcome, guys, of course. So, guys, I'm reading the chat section right now. So, guys, Dan is sharing some interesting ideas. um, so, Jake says, I can imagine if this world is a simulation, then whatever the real world is outside of it must be incredibly different and far more complex. Yeah, the kind of we can't see outside of the sphere we're in situation. And then Dan says existence is simulated experientially, at very least biologically. For example, looking at a light consumes energy. For when a photon hits the retina, it takes a unit of biological energy to register the stimulus. So guys, Dan is saying this in the chat section. To further the topic, imagine the situation of someone removing the crown of your head and holding a mirror to reveal the image of your brain. Right. So guys, first of all, welcome everybody, and Dan, thanks for sharing. This is like what these live streams are here for, exactly for the listeners to give momentum or add dimensions to the talk by sharing. But I have to say something, Dan. I noticed that you say. You say existence is simulated experientially, at very least biologically. Now, biology. Let me tell you, I gotta kind of. This is a cool thing because when I have to explain to you what I mean by existence and what I mean by experience. So for me, I was like, all right, if there needs to be a system that a human being can acknowledge reality, it has to be it has to work in the simplest states and it has to work in the complex states of interpretation. So I would say right now, as I'm sitting here, as I'm giving this talk, if I was to ask myself what is existing, I see all that is in form. Okay? I see all that is in form. So existence for me is shape. Experience is the attributeless observance of shape. So for me, I guess I'm kind of more inclined towards how Rene Descartes saw it. For me, the experience is a precondition before existence for the inner realms, but existence is a precondition for experience in the outer realms. That means if nothing exists, who is experiencing? And if there is no experiencer, why is the existence here? You know, it's a very fascinating concept. Now, the more we look at it in a mystical sense, there is a sort of stepping out of duality into a realization that all that is within the void has a singular presence. So if you notice mystical traditions, they all went towards oneness, and then the student was like, "Yo, what do I do after oneness?" And the guru was like, "There's nothing you can do after oneness, man. You know, it's all one." You know, it is fascinating. We can't ignore that there is a complex relationship of particles with one another. But for me, the biggest question was, is the mind local to the brain or is it non-local? And the school of thought that I've, through my own experiences, have comprehended that it's not local to the brain, but the brain is its alphabet. Without a reference point, you cannot exist in duality. That means it's kind of like if someone asks you who you are right now, but you don't conceive a past to yourself, what answer can you give? You can even define yourself by the potential who you will be, but you're still not your future. So it's that chaotic moment where the past is past and the future hasn't arrived, and where are we now? Guys, I'm telling you, if people are interested in theosophy or a relationship with the invisible, I'm not here too much. I mean, I do share my science fiction sometimes, but I'm not here to. You see, there was something I got to share. I experienced through my own intuitive process from 2014, let's say, to 2016, even before that, like 2013 to 2016. And what I understood was that I was seeking the extrasensory, I was seeking the unknown, not for the right reasons. I was seeking the unknown because I had disconnected it from my known. I felt I knew what I was, so then there was endless unknown. And then I was like, wait a minute, what if the known is the unknown? You know? In the school of thought that in the hallways of the school of thought that Terence McKenna walked in, I cannot ignore that human beings are attempting to wonder about what else there is in any way they can. And it's kind of, believe it or not, in an innocent way, very poetic what human beings are doing. We're just eyes that have appeared and we don't know. We don't know where we came from because the concept of location, the concept of a character and a story we built. I am telling you, all your inner realms, all the beliefs you have of the supernatural. This is what I say. I say study language before you study spirituality. Study how an experience transforms into a concept in a moment, and sometimes it tends to be instantaneous. What does that mean? That means I look at this cup of coffee, and how is it that instantly I knew it was a cup of coffee? Where was the certainty, you know? And you see that it's the certainty is there because you ascribed it. So sometimes the certainty in your inner realms of what you feel you're communicating to is actually how you have accepted language, right? So I'm telling you guys, like, this is very crucial. Jordan Peterson was speaking about it in a very incredible way, where he said there was a time where people didn't know, like, the future was discovered. They didn't know they can think ahead. They didn't know they could look ahead. They did. It's like being a driver, but not looking, but not realizing the vehicle you're driving has a front window, and suddenly you look through that front window and you see ahead. And it's kind of fascinating because when you look at human decision making, it seems like there's an abstract, like the person, imagine you enter a situation, you got to handle that situation. So you enter that situation and you are, like, let's say you are walking in your inner realms. That means life is going with a certain program of meaning. And I'm just saying that when you enter a new situation, you cannot understand anything new unless you allow yourself to perceive something new about the world. And the moment you perceive something new about the world, it's either a transformation of the past or it's the new. So, what does that mean? That means we are never what we think, but we are how our attention moves thought. And I am telling you, eventually the species, in my inner realms, I see it. In the outer realms, I don't know if I'm going to be alive for it. But like I see, I see that there will come a moment where we will look at life and we will see beyond the form that we're all of it. So right now, we are not treating as if the external is our mind. We're not treating it that way, but technically it is. That means if you go suddenly slap someone, if you like if you let me tell you, if you hurt life, you're hurting your own life because your mind is being the moment. You cannot consider anything that it's not in the space of the mind. I honestly feel, I've spoken about it, how I called it in another talk, freedom, FREEDOME, subjective mechanics. How when the human being considers that the subjective reality is again like a dome, like a sphere. I have asked myself, why do I have senses? And the answer has been any creative movement on an empty page. So I am telling you, there are states of life that they are just space. There are certain states of mind that I call them, they're empty seeing. You're literally sight, just watching. There's no body. It's like your location is in the world first, then the self. So if you exist in the world first, then the self, when the self dismantles, your existence of the world is still there. Oh, guys, I feel I need to share a story. I need to share a story of the divinity of ignorance. Now, when I was in Iran, like I visited in the summers, and I remember that I found myself on a date with this Persian girl who, in some sense, her mother was a clairvoyant. And I remember when we went on that date, she was telling me all about how in her dreams she could move. You know, in her dreams she could, in some sense, she felt. I asked her, why do you want spirituality? You know what her answer was? I asked her, why do you care for the other, the invisible other? Why do you even care for the unknown? And you know what she told me? She said she wants power. She was running towards spirituality because she felt inferior. And all those, I am telling you, in yoga, they say the practitioner will attain certain abilities, but that practitioner should not use those abilities unless it's the other realm moving first. So what that means is we human beings, think of it this way, uh, we have been given the wrong image of ourselves. We are much more able than we appear to be. And so when we went to think of power and ability, sometimes it's like you are able from before and then you kind of remember it, right? The thing is, let me tell you, it's like, Terence McKenna says it brilliantly. He says there is another tenant in the room. What that tenant is, I can say what that tenant is it is not conceptual. It is beyond the language threshold. I created that world because I'm telling you, there is a state of mind you can walk in where you will be the god of your inner realm, so you will feel all powerful. You will feel all powerful in your inner realms. You can definitely go into state. And it's another way of saying God is giving you, it's like, let me tell you, there are ways that if you feel you don't deserve something, by the way, any human being listening, anything you do in this life, if you feel you don't deserve it, your mind will not hold on to that object of desire or that subject of desire. I am saying we have been playing too much language games. These language games, it's like, imagine the human being like a cup. You open a valve, the water fills the cup to the brim. When it pours out from the brim, the person, because their reality is full, because they feel that they have known the objective enough, then they run to the subjective. I am telling you guys, I am speaking in a different school of, like in a different way than what the New Age community is looking at, and even I bring a lot of references of mystical states, but even what those guys were speaking about, most religions and most esoteric practices are trying to get you out of here. Most spirituality, it was like when I facepalmed myself when I saw that wisdom had become escapism. It broke my heart. And I realized, okay, we'll let the ancient mystics be okay because they had no choice. Literally, society and technology and civilization wasn't evolved enough. So yeah, sure, go in a cave and go in your inner realms. But in regards to the outer realms, in regards to your outer realms, there's a civilization here now. It is not enough to be a spiritual man in the cave behind your eyes only. It is now time for the inner realms to pour outwards. You know. And eventually, the more the person, so check this out. This is why in Zen, it's life, they draw a symbol of a circle. And with a calligraphy brush, they draw a circle of a circle. Why? Because you are first running away from your world. That is why you're interested in spirituality. You want to see something different. You have not yet realized the reflection of the ultimate. You have not realized the potential of the mind to animate itself even as the void, to animate itself as in the infinite and the singular and the dualistic. So, anyways, guys, I guess I'll um, fly away from the branch of the chat section because really it's you can endlessly animate meaning in the inner realms. The sincerity part of it is when your simpler self is not being avoided. Most people, they can't see life being simple, so they have to have a complex interpretation. But there are some people who they are in the simple, and then they suddenly look at the complex, and then they are not afraid of the complex because they have seen the simple. You're comfortable when you're comfortable with your non-existence, then you'll see the infinite. I feel. I don't feel you can see it before that. And let me tell you what's funny. When you become comfortable with non-existence, there is no desire to see the unknown. You know, it's. I remember saying the story. Uh, this guy, he does some super duper kind of enlightenment technique, and suddenly finds himself, his head popping out of the clouds on the mountain of the gods. And suddenly all the gods that are above the clouds suddenly see this guy's head pop from the clouds, and the guy's like, I made it, guys, I made it to heaven, I got out of the simulation, I got out of the ignorance, I made it to heaven, guys. And then all the people and all the gods in the heavens looked at the guy who had just, snuck his head into heaven. And that guy, all the gods said, "Why are you here? You have work to do. Go back down." You know. So that's what I'm telling you. Some ideologies, they make you forget your world. Some ideologies make you forget how it looked, but they push you towards it. I'm telling you, too much spirituality has made man's activity like a tree. Where I remember I was really into deep meditation, and I had these Buddhist beads, like Tibetan Buddhist beads and whatnot. And it was like one day my father came to me and he's like, "Why are you being a tree?" And then I realized we have an ability that is more than just mere presence. I'm telling you guys, like, it's our birthright. It's every human being's birthright that wherever their attention looks, energy goes. So if you want to tomorrow see yourself as if, like, I can tell you, the same way there is an ambition for the New Age community, a theosophical ambition to kind of communicate beyond the veil. That ambition is like you can see the world as if it's all a simulation. And we're actually on Jupiter, simulating existence on Earth. On the moons of Jupiter. Why not? Do you see how powerful the inner realms are? What can I say when the phoenix burns at the head of the white cylinder? Words are reborn. It's not about your belief. Your belief can be on anything. You can literally believe a cup of coffee is the design of the universe. Why not? You know? You can feel the inner realms. I don't know. I think there's a value for the inner realms to be externalized. Like I'm that guy history saying, hey, 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere. You have all these abstract phenomena behind your eyes. That means imagination is like your own private room, is it not? That means if somebody tells you visualize a glowing blue cube hovering in the air, slowly like spinning around itself, you know? So you can imagine that, but you can't pick up that cube and put it on the table. So what does that mean? That means our inner realms give us access to the awareness to design, but that design is not tangible. And I was looking at 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere and asking myself, what is the best thing they can do? And it's to roar out communication. Now is the era of advanced communication. Now communication is the only technology, inner technology, that we can evolve. You see, external technologies are evolving. Your grandchildren could be lost in the cyberspace culture. A garden is an environment where many different designs coexist. And there was this view, it was more in the Sufi dervish context, that it was the garden of existence. That it's not only we are finding the way the human life is appearing as like suddenly something that has sprouted on the surface of the earth. It's as if like in many, this field is vast. And what if it's like little did the, how, like imagine a sun is a seed planted in the soil of space and it is rooting out, you know? It's all about language, guys. It's just a sensitivity to language. That's it. All of reality is hovering in a sort of linguistic simulation, is it not? The way we can talk about each other, the way we can even communicate about each other is all through language. So language is a technology that most people think they are. Most people, like if you ask them, are you a good person or a bad person? The guy has an answer. The guy has an answer. What that means is like we embody shapes, not just our bodies. You can say, Hegel spoke about a thought as a sort of internal object, so we can say we're not just an outer object, we're an inner object to ourselves, but an object that is kept in the light of our attention. Your attention is your control. Like think about a surgeon and think about like a pilot. What is the focus? What is the skill required? The skill is required with a precision of attention and the time to do the activity in. You know, I feel that when a person uh, realizes life is more than words with spaces in between, experience moves you. They said this, that they said the point of the outer guru in India and Indian tradition, the guru, there was like, so you gotta think about it this way, that if there was something suddenly discovered that was profound, how would it be transmitted? And so not a lot of people were writers, not a lot of people were scribes. Scribes are the hidden angels of history, you know? And so it's kind of like, how can I tell you? It was oration, it was through speech. It was that experience had, like anything that happened externally, it left an inner impression. That inner impression, based on how the being was a subject to itself, can be communicated, was communicated and passed on. There's a story of Rumi. Rumi is the Sufi mystic poet from 700 years ago. And what does Rumi say? Or better yet, what's the story that's ascribed to him? The story is that Rumi, he's like this educated kid, son of a duke, and he's sitting by a fountain reading this next level rare science book that there was only one copy of. this mathematics book or whatnot. And then there's this who later on in his biography becomes his actual like guru. They had gurus back in the day, and so this kind of spiritual wild man, like what's the name, nomad, like this like back in the day there were certain level of mystics who they just roamed the earth. Do you know? Their home was the whole moment. It wasn't just like a shape. So, anyways, Rumi, this kid in his like let's say late 20s, he's sitting by a fountain reading this book, this like science book, and out of nowhere, this dervish by the name of Shams Tabrizi, he comes and he sees Rumi Molana. He sees him, and he says, "Hey kid," very intensely, like with a very like chaotic presence. He says, "Hey kid, what are you reading?" Do you know? And Rumi looks at him and sees it's like this random, kind of person who's come out of the wilderness, and it's like he's dressed in dervish clothing, and like he has a long beard, and it's like this old guy, right? So Rumi sees him and he says, "Nothing," like he takes the posh ignorance attitude. He says, "Nothing you would understand, old man. This is the newest sciences of the time." He's pretty much saying, "Buddy, you have no clue what I'm holding in my hand." And so you see what happens. You know, uh, in that moment, Shams Tabrizi. Okay, guys, hopefully this isn't on mute, is it? No, okay. Shams Tabrizi, he looks at Rumi and he takes the book from his hand and he throws it in the fountain. And Rumi, he feels disappointed, but in that instant there is an anger. Because Shams has taken the book and thrown it into the water, so he's destroyed it. Rumi says, "Do you know what you have done? You have destroyed the future." Because there was only the photocopy machines didn't exist. There was only one copy. Shams Tabrizi picks up that book, and this is the moral of the story here, guys. He picks up the book and gives it to Rumi, and the book is completely dry, and Rumi goes in shock. He's speechless. And Shams, very kindly and gracefully, looks at him and says, "Listen, knowledge that can be wiped with water is not the real knowledge, is no knowledge at all." And he says that you are in a situation where it's like a coin flip of whether you are an eternal or a temporary being. If reality is seen multidimensional, the coin flip is still flipping in the air. We don't know. But if reality is seen in a singular dimension, of course there can be no other dimensions because everything is defined from inside that dimension. You know? For me, it's I remember saying it that I feel on some level all human beings, even all human beings, are subconsciously reacting. They are reacting in overwhelmment and shock to emptiness. We are reacting to emptiness, but because the mind has moved into more sophisticated programs, more mature programs of behavior, it's been left in the subconscious. So believe it or not, our subconscious is freaking out. So if every person you see And you can tell that underneath whatever they're attempting to be in that moment, there's a void that we all confront, acknowledge. So you see, this is why you gotta let nature grow. Nature's walk should not be too disturbed by the inner realm's individuality. That means this is like pretty much, I think, uh, uh, a decent recommendation that whoever is living in this physical plane of existence, be aware of how the world is moving you and how you are moving the world. And the parts that you want to move the world, you have to, in some sense, also check with the world before you move. So I can tell you in my youth, I was, till 2011, I was trying to be a certain person. I was pretty much this kid that was overwhelmed by all that could be done, and so I had this kind of ruthlessness before 2011. I was a bit of a like if I saw myself before 2011, I'd probably be like, get out of here, you know, like. And I'll tell you, because I did not care for the world, I only cared for my world. That was the main change. When I realized there's something alive beyond all the language my mind has extracted from this realm, then there was just a silent witnessing. And when you are silent enough, you realize that you are not seeing your life in language or words or beliefs or thoughts. You see your life in accordance to instant experiential action. So you will reach a state of mind where, think of right now language and image, and pretty much I'm telling you, the species is playing ideological costume games. We're all language worshippers. Let me tell you why. Because in our inner realms, there's an isolation that every person is trying to reach outwards from. It's as if, like, imagine there's a black hole um, that's pulling this astronaut, and this astronaut is trying to somehow is like hold on to some rope, or let's say you're being pulled at the edge of a cliff by gravity, and you're like, gravity, let go of me, and you try to climb back up, And gravity's like, sorry, buddy, universal orders. I can't. I don't know, guys. For me, I feel like, okay, we use telescopes to study the stars. What are we using to study the mind, the inner sky? And the inner sky, I'm realizing, because the nature of language is evocational, let me tell you what magic was. Magic, there's a reason children, they call it spelling. Do you know? Because the letters suddenly become a word, and then the word suddenly becomes a reality. And you don't know how many human beings I have seen that they have not realized in their subconscious language worshipping, they are actually solidifying their inner realms as the, like, let me tell you, it's like, in the outer realms, there's laws in society and civility that we need to abide by. But in the inner realms, a person can be good and bad simultaneously. So what does that mean? That means behind your eyes, there is an urge towards the expression of chaos and order, but in front of your eyes, we tend to acknowledge order because that's more updated. That means it's always, always, always easier to break something. It's like it takes 1 second to interrupt someone when speaking. But that person to start speaking, it takes them a while to kind of see a world to then draw from. So you see, when I look at this baby falcon, you know what I see? I see a creature that's just like, okay, I have no clue what this is, but let's see what it is. This is it. Because if we try to define the higher dimensions, we miss out on how they could define us. You see, right now, especially when you see in religion, even relationship with the invisible other, it has been too storified. If you enter the unknown as a character in a story, you're pretty much like just go on Amazon and order ideological dress wear. You know what I mean? Like there is something about the unknown that shouldn't be touched. So I can tell you the major force that my intuition kind of revealed to me were certain moments where I felt like I should enter, and certain moments that were like rooms that I knew don't enter or don't do anything in. Do you know how many times I have been around people and it's like literally my thoughts, they have come and said to me. Do you know what I mean by that? That means I've been thinking about something the whole day. Sometimes for me, when a person acknowledges their mind can do work even their body is asleep. For example, Ray Kurzweil, this futurist, when he goes to sleep, right before he goes to sleep, he thinks of a very complex problem and then he goes to sleep. And then sometimes in his dreams, he gets innovative ideas. So what that means is we have to master, as a civilization, our external technologies and our inner technologies. These talks of mine are more focused on the inner technology, you know? And as I poetically wrote, I remember I wrote a sentence like it was kind of like my gift to Elon Musk from the tiny corner of the world that I'm in, you know? It was like I said, go further, Elon, you Musk. So, anyways, let's continue. Let's say you're a human being. You have been thinking your whole life you're an object, and you're also a subject. Your name, your personality, your meaning, positions of linguistic meaning. So let's say you're a person where you have experienced yourself as an object, and you have also experienced the relationship of you as an object with other human minds as a subject. Now you're starting to see that if there was something of a further relationship, let's say human beings found the perfect way to communicate and coexist with all the other species on Earth, external species. Let us now say that we find comfort with existing, like for example, in my visions of Civilization 2.0, there will be great transformations that in some sense we will become comfortable with each other as a species. Now, let's say, so externally, we have technically, in a social context of communication, become comfortable communicating with animals. We have become comfortable communicating with others, other human beings, and we have become comfortable communicating even with computers and AI. And let's say we have even become comfortable communicating with ourselves. That means being ourselves. After we have attained a sort of comfort, then comes the question, could there be species in more subtler dimensions? Could there be subtler dimensions that are extensions of nature beyond the sensory range of the human being? Could there be fields that we are not seeing where there are flowers of unknown origin? So you see, the mind, after it has become comfortable with what it knows, begins to take steps towards the unknown. That step towards the unknown, you have your sense of knowledge as a being, you don't realize it. It is like the Pandora's box where you must open it, and in it there is the light of a paradox. And so you must confront that. You must acknowledge, or as Alan Watts said, you must become conscious of the dualistic mind. Once you are comfortable with the dualistic mind, that means you are not going to go into every moment endlessly stories of chaos and order manifesting. You are treating the unknown as a watcher. You are becoming the presence of the cosmos watching itself. And then you will see how much it was unnecessary to see magic, how much unnecessary it was to see hierarchies to the divine, how much unnecessary it is, because in some sense you are what you're looking for. It is there behind your eyes, nameless, attributeless. It is the field that's moving us. This field is very... You see, let me tell you this, every time, in history a new technology has come, it has made other technologies obsolete. And when there comes an experiential advancement and acceleration of the human being towards a certain direction, when attention, let me tell you guys, it's believe it or not, it was like this Japanese show where the characters, when they would get angry, they would just shout and their energy levels would increase. Okay, so I am telling you, any person, it comes with the gift of the mind. Any person who pays attention, practice concentration. Concentration is the most important thing, because in it, you at first look at one thing. It's called single pointedness of mind. We can say a new experience is a new usage of the inner technology. Do you know how many ways my eyes have opened on this planet? Do you know in how many ways? Sometimes I feel like, all right, enough seeing a face in the mirror. It becomes, after a point, it just becomes like your whole moment is this giant glass orb that's moving around on the surface of the unknown. So I am telling you, our knowledge is the reflection of the unconscious unknown. So I am telling you, when the known entity, right now we are objective, individual, known creatures. Okay, that's our starting point. That's how we're starting in this subject, in the linguistic simulation, right? We are in an abstract way certain that we're objects. So, I hope secular society's listening. Objective individual known creatures are wondering about, excuse my language, but objective individual known creatures are wondering what the fuck is going on here in this world. Okay? So I am saying, let us now ask the question. Let us now break the doors that all the philosophers of the world are hiding behind. Where can an an objective individual known creature go? Imagine for eons. Imagine for trillions of years you were just an object, an individual, and a known creature. For how long will this go? I say that there will come an advancement beyond the language threshold. There will come a moment where we will realize our language is the plane that our attention is navigating. So I feel right now we look at this sentence like I've written it here, objective individual known creatures. Now let's just wonder about the reverse. So it would be a subjective, collective, unknown, non-creature. So if right now me and you are thinking we're objects, thinking we're individuals, thinking that we know, thinking that we're creatures, now Mr. Within is saying, what is the reverse? And the reverse is a subjective, collective, unknown, non-creature. So what does that mean? That means it's a field. That means our minds were born as a field, our bodies are the particles moving in these fields. That is why we have free will. So ask yourself, what is your free will moving if you're everything? All those people who believe in oneness, all those people who feel everything is the same thing, tell me, what is observing? This was the grand question, guys. Pretty much any time that you can use this, I will declare this as the mystical algorithm. That means if life is a puzzle like a Rubik's Cube, whatever creature you are on, whatever planet, whatever species, this is the algorithm, the mystical algorithm to the Rubik's Cube of life's mystery. The algorithm is, who am I? And honest asking this. You ask this. When you ask this from your mind shouts back at you, gives you an answer, says you are this, you came from here, you did that, you did this, But then you ask it again, who am I? It's as if you are in a kind of, in a debate with your own mind. Who am I? Who am I? As if like the hammer of Thor is being slammed against the walls of a holographic simulation. Who am I? Who am I? And eventually you will notice you're not the language. When you realize you're not the language, how could words touch you? How could words define you? Magic has been, in some sense, we evolved beyond it. And what I mean by this is that you, dear human being, before you wore any idea, any belief, any thought, you were a child of nature. You were a little kid who didn't know language. So your mind was experiencing the whole moment as itself. So language is a world inside a world. And when we just live based on the world inside the world, the inner realms, you become ignorant of the outer realms. What your inner realms give you is more, your mouth is watering more for. Oh, I never finished, guys. I never finished telling you the point of the story of that date I went on in Iran. So she said power, and then she asked me what? Why did I go through spirituality? And I told her it was like this, me knocking on a door and the door not opening. For me, my experience of it, guys, I'm just telling you, Realize everybody has their inner realms. Realize that we don't have each other's eyes. That's the cool part of being human. If we had each other's eyes, that would be freaky. We would be clones. Now, when it comes to the exploration of consciousness, we're pretty much looking at human behavior and we're wondering if this behavior is just originating and being projected from the brain, or could the brain be an antenna? If the brain could be an antenna, it means dimensions interact. It means higher dimensions know we're here and we are remembering that we are there. And so what does this mean? It means the destruction, not the destruction, it means the evaporation of the dualistic boundary to the expression of the energy that is conscious in the moment. So right now, simplest way you can acknowledge yourself, I think it's like both, and all people alive will probably acknowledge this, that there's energy here. Okay, let's call this energy unknown at first. Now this energy, through a very long process, has in some sense become conscious energy. So you can say that all those people in reality who have been like, yo man, there's a soul here, they have just been saying energy is conscious of itself. That it is not just the body of man that sees itself in the mirror. The mind can see how it is the mystery of its own visibility. Now that is key. That is key, because what are human beings doing here? And I am. If you're listening to my talks, I'm pretty much telling you that we should strive towards building an advanced civilization. Because why not? It's like really, when you look at it, when you have an opportunity, you should take it. No, I mean, what is more common sense than that? And if we, as a civilization, after 4 billion years, the science project that has been left here, should we attend it? Should we strive towards lifting our species from inefficiency? For how long do we want to just see rectangles and squares everywhere? For how long are the sidewalks going to be so narrow? There will come a time where we will begin becoming very not street smart, I would say galactically street smart beings. So what that means is the grandeur of the potential of how something can be changed with the right effort. It's like you'll see it. It's like when you have a better opportunity, you just take it. And if your civilization has a better opportunity, it should take it, but it's not. And the main reason is because after idol worship back in the day, imagine a bunch of people, they were looking, they were bored, they were trying to find a god to worship, and so they see this chair and suddenly the clouds open and a light falls on this chair and all these people are like, yo, this chair is our god, this chair is divine. They start worshiping that chair. They start idol worshiping. They start thinking an object is the source of all truth, of all reality, the meaning of it, the source of the meaning. And so their attention is stuck on this chair. And then some guy comes and he's like, what are you guys doing with my chair? I need my chair back. And they're like, no, don't take our God from us. And the guy's like, give back my chair, And so what happened after the idols of man's worship were slapped out of his hands by nature? We started worshiping subjects. And that's why I say it's kind of scary. Kind of freaky when you kind of see that, oh my God, have people been thinking they are a language that their mind generates momentarily this whole time? And there's actually a deeper mystery. It's like, there is a mystery. That mystery keeps us living. Energy needs space to move. That means there's always more space. So the mind has to create space before it moves, so there's always potential. Now, I can say death can also be, when we think of ourselves, we say we're creatures with minds, right? But when a person goes into sleep, they sleep and they go to a deep sleep, it's as if the mind is not existential to itself. So technically, in deep sleep, who is there to be alive? Or who is there to be dead? Nature is present before man could speak. Could that be the Aeonian secret? The secret of the eons? That it is, how can I tell you, you have to decide. That's the joy of living. Do you know? That means you become comfortable with being an individual, I think, when you're also comfortable with the collective being there. Do you know? So we worshipped objects, then we worshipped subjects, then we're like, okay, we shouldn't worship subjects because there's, they can be imaginary and abstract, so there's room for error there for some worshiping a subject because it can be stretched in different ways. But you see, we then came to the secularism in Western culture where it's now like, okay, there is no imagination, it's nonsense. So imagination is not nonsense, it's actually the space for your senses. You can say imagination is how a sensory experience echoes in a subtler way. So if you are a creature of two dimensions, let's say dimension A and dimension B, and let's say dimension B is engulfing like spirit, like concentric spheres, is like dimension A is a smaller sphere inside this bigger sphere that's dimension B. Now, this creature in dimension A can do something, but if you notice, the space of the inspiration came from a higher dimension. That means hope doesn't come from an image of a reality where the person is not there. It comes from an image of a reality where the person is there. Do you know? That means you can say those people who have hope, they see the finish line. But people who don't see the finish line, how could they have hope? You know? If nature is walking, a grand question will find the stranger of worlds. Where? Where to? And I'm going to share with the audience something right now, which is the core of my ideology. Civilization 2.0 is Mr. Within's strategy for our species to bypass extinction indefinitely. And the strategy is that all Civilization 2.0, firstly, very simply, it can be said, the effort of our civilization to live in our orbit for 2,000 years while we restore the Earth, or I call it the heavenized Earth. So this is not my science fiction, guys. This is my actual intent for this plane of existence. That means out of all the various inner landscapes that I've found me, this one is one where I'm finding it's as if like, if your soul was a chord, I hit a chord with this idea, you know? Civilization 2.0 is for 2,000 years will be in our orbit. And so what is the idea? I have kind of given it a projection, and I'm kind of doing this in the eyes of a designer, not in the eyes of somebody who's saying this is true, this is not true. I'm telling you just how far I have seen. This is Mr. Within's vision of Civilization 2.0. It has three phases. Phase one is build sky cities, design sky cities. So I feel all of human resources right now should go into researching how to get our civilization into the air. Because as long as the civilization is on the surface of the earth, nature will constantly cause damages. So we have to, believe it or not, we are creatures that are realizing that it's much more healthier to live in the sky for now, at least. So I'm giving this talk in 2020. I have predicted in the year 2622, phase one of Civilization 2.0 would begin. And if you were alive at that time, you'd probably be like some person walking in a park and you'd be like, wait a minute, are the skyscrapers becoming taller? And you're seeing, no, all cities on Earth are moving through very advanced sky cities into the orbit. And then that's what occurs, you know. So this is the strategy, guys. Just think about how ingenious this idea is. If we go on and live, first of all, overpopulation is a problem. Yes, on a two-dimensional space, it's a problem. But in a three-dimensional space, it's not a problem. That's why in the cartoon, the Jetsons, they were all smiling. Because the many problems that shift the archetypes, inner archetypes of people towards more chaotic ones, is when they are rejected from the better worlds that they attempt. So that's the idea, guys. That phase one, the moment sky cities are, we go in the air and it's complete, you know, and in that celebration culture, we will start phase two of Civilization 2.0, and I'm phase two. Sorry, guys. The phase two of Civilization 2.0 is called Earth Heavena. And Earth Heavena is the term I've given to the concept, the heavenized Earth. Pretty much the idea is while we're living, taking advantage of three-dimensional space, first of all, we have access, all the world's resources become accessible to everyone. So no country is lacking resources. Okay? The second thing is that when we're living in the air, people are going to be like, what do we do? And the action is to have this giant kind of project of trying to make Earth like an uninhabited heaven. That's what the heavenized Earth means. And so, pretty much, while we're living in the orbit, the planet is restoring itself. We're healing, we're letting the planet become heaven. We're pretty much building paradise on Earth, literally, by getting ourselves out of it. So, you know, we take the hell out of it, and then the heaven can live freely. You know, so it would be amazing. So now in that time, this doesn't mean there's no infrastructure on Earth. It just means the whole point of us going into the sky is that we want there to be as little infrastructure on Earth so that Earth becomes more just like a natural playground rather than a technological battlefield. You know, now there is also this idea of cyberspace culture that we are really getting drawn and more intimate with our technology. That means the average child cares more about buying the newest console or gadget than climbing the tree. Do you know what that means? That means the interaction with the natural world is being reduced because the human being has a certain range of attention throughout the day, and what fills that attention dictates what that being is being to itself. If you're around warriors, you will feel like a warrior. If you're around artists, you will feel like an artist. If you're around philosophers, you will feel like a philosopher. If you're around mystics, silence is the center of the circle. So phase three would be the effort of a conscious, first ever in history of a conscious civilization. Civilization 2.0, the way I envisioned it is that it's going to be a civilization that in phase three it's going to ask itself if there's a choice can be made. There's a crossroad. In phase three of civilization where the people at that time will do it. No, no so Savu Dragon, Thank you for sharing your comment. You say Mikio Kaku says something in that sense. Types of civilization we need to be as fast as possible as civilization on two planets. No, no, no. I am not saying two planets. In the interstellar, I am envisioning realistically we will become an interstellar civilization. Uh, 600, 200,000, 3,600 years from now, we will become an interstellar civilization. Not now. Now we can go on there and try to live in a very savage conditions, but we are not that advanced. Because the issue is the moment those in the on other planets that are dependent on the interface of Earth, if Earth doesn't work well, it becomes meaningless. So I'm telling you, Sky Cities is much more better idea right now than interstellar, becoming an interstellar civilization. You know, I respect Elon Musk, but dude, start building sky cities. You know. So now check out this idea. I said phase three, which is I define civilization 2.0, this design of mine, as a sort of yin yang civilization. So what does that mean for in people in phase three of civilization 2.0? That means after we've built sky cities successfully, after we have built, what do you call it? Um, Earth Heaven. After we have built Earth Heaven, do you know? After we've built the heavenized Earth, then in the third phase, we have the option where we ask ourselves, why are we in the air? I am creating that kind of possibility. So the people of then can decide where the civilization goes, not just my inner visions of it, you know? And then what happens is either we become an interstellar civilization and we move on to phase four, which I will tell you, it's not we are going to be exploring. AI is going to go and pretty much set up the civilizations and other planets, and when it's complete, we're going to be traveling to them. That's going to be the interstellar civilization. We're not going to be doing the building. We're going to be like, AI, can you please build a civilization on Mars? And AI is going to be like, I got you. You know. And AI kind of like builds that civilization, you know. So that's at one crossroad. We become an interstellar civilization, and we carry on this game of biological endurance on everywhere in the cosmos. Okay, so this massive AI infused repopulation effort. So right now, we should try to populate as much as we can, not with the fear that the overpopulation is going to kill us on a two-dimensional plane, but that when the time comes, there was never overpopulation. I'm telling you, overpopulation is not a problem. It's only a problem if we don't build sky cities. The second road is I have spoken about advancement beyond the language threshold. And what the advancement beyond the language threshold is really that in phase three, the other crossroad is that we're going to evolve cyberspace. So we're gonna explore the world through cyberspace culture. So in one way we advance our inner technologies, and in one way we advance our outer technologies. Believe it or not, virtual reality is kind of like how you're experiencing yourself behind your eyes. The inner realms are sort of very virtual oriented, to be shaped. So now, guys, check this out. Check this out. What do you think happens when a civilized? What do you think happens to nationalism? I've written about this in my book, The Evolution. So I say that why I've said 600 years from now we're going to start Civilization 2.0 Phase 1 is because in that 600 years, currently the Civilization 1.0 I see, it needs to have certain great transformations. One of these great transformations is in regards to nationalism. So right now, I came and saw the problem of nationalism and the whole problem of the United Nations, and I'm like, if it's called the United Nations, why are these nations at war still? So it was like I came to a sort of, how can I tell you? I asked myself, how can we, because you see, nationalism, in regards to war, it's bad, but in regards to the contribution it has had, that human beings on the earth spoke different dialects, than when the nationalism began, specific languages began being chosen, you know? An advanced civilization cannot come about if there isn't an advanced. I don't know how to say it, guys. It's just like after some point you'll realize it's not about the endless stories that the world can be held in. It is about a sort of remembrance that as above, so below. That if we are to discover the greatest cosmic activity, it would be ourselves. So I'm thinking, all right, an advanced civilization, we advance the external technologies through this model of civilization 2.0, and we advance the inner technologies through something I've kind of created, which I'm telling you, it's going to take me 10 years to finish this, but it's this idea that there are certain pillars to civilization that must be protected. The invisible other is you, but it's not the conceptual you. Your unconscious is you. You don't know, but in some states of mind, your unconscious is more real to you than your consciousness. In some states of mind, your consciousness is more real than your unconsciousness. Simply said, I have when I'm kind of like when I'm not around people, my inner realms are more real for me. When I'm around people, immediately my inner realms shut down because I become fascinated how the environment is moving. And fascination is the healthiest state to be in. Become fascinated about something. Like this bird you see right now, this innocent, super cute looking bird, you know? This innocent, super cute bird in a couple years is going to be tearing up rabbits, you know? But it's super cute. That means the inner child of the human being is an authorization of their simplest self by their moment. Let me tell you, some relationships, and the reason I kind of brought up that thing, you know, the mother, the clairvoyant mother of this girl that I was dating in Iran, the daughter told me a story of the mother, how the mother had kind of followed this guru in Iran that had an ability with interdimensional beings or something, and the mother had followed this guru, and the guru's personality had overpowered her own free will. So what that means is she wasn't thinking as an unknown moment about knowledge. She thought she was known, you know? And she told me that it was as if like a storm, where as if a human being, like I am telling you, I hope the best thing my words are for people is that it becomes a mirror of how your own mind is seeing meaning. Language is really it's a self-reflective technology. Ink on a piece of paper, what is that? It's just ink on a piece of paper, but when we look at it, there is a reflection of what the word existence means in seeing that symbol on the page. Alan Watts, guys, let me know in the chat section how many people are fond of him. Alan Watts, he had this thing, he said, imagine you could dream any dream, and after you had dreamed all the dreams, like he found such an ingenious way to say it. And he said, after you have dreamed all the dreams you could, you eventually want a dream where you're not controlling. And a civilization in which power and efficiency is only found in the dominator kind of mindset is really missing out on all the advanced technologies that could happen if we had access to the gentle. So I am telling you, it's like as extinction comes closer, man's decisions become more intense. So sometimes in life, the sooner you make a decision, it's like you looked at the moment and you kept walking. You know, there was this preacher, uh, guys, the greatest efficiency. I mean, think about it. We gotta think about it like a war against the unknown. Not like a messed up war, but like just the sense that if there was, let's just imagine, guys, the movie Independence Day. There was an alien species, and this alien species in the movie Independence Day attacks humanity, and human beings are like, no, you don't. You know? You know, and so what happens is that all humanity unites. In regards to nationalism, there is a sudden unity. There is a sudden unity, as if the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And if man is fighting for his species, then it becomes a totally different game, totally different landscape of acknowledgement. So I am saying, imagine now a civilization where its voices, the voice of your civilization came to you and said to you that all human beings, all that they have ever known, all that they currently know is hovering in the unknown. And we have to be united by our retaliation against the unknown by realizing now evolution is commanding us to not just live as bodies, you also require to live as a mind. That means if you reduce the meaning of all your whole moment into just materiality, your inner realms will be like, what the fuck, man? I feel, you know, these talks that I share, they are a symptom of an upcoming multidimensional renaissance where human beings will realize that society has been made them feel like, oh no, you can't be your natural self. You got to be this unnatural thing for survival reasons. Do you know? But there will come a time where civilization will ask you, what do you see that nobody does? What is it that your ancestors endured so long for that now that you are here, if your eyes looked at that global problem, what could they contribute? This is why I'm saying in the educational system, all parents listening to me, you know, you can kind of act as the teacher in the school before your child goes to school. Do you know? And what it is I feel the younger the child, the more the global problem should be shared in a simple way. That means imagine the teacher tells like middle school kids, like, all right, kids, first for your homework, you have to go and first research what are the biggest problems in the world, and then you gotta go research. Like not research, let's say. The teacher says you just give your own answer to world hunger, to poverty, to this and to that, and you'll see so many kids because they're just abiding by the school system. They will have to answer it, and they will have to think about their world. You know, for me, the problem of the educational system is not that it's giving too many answers. The problem is that it is not asking enough questions. You know, you see, it's really, if we want to take it really seriously and to somehow linearize it, so um, it would be kind of saying that, have we stopped evolving, or are we just evolving in a different way? Do you know? And I've noticed anything that man has made technology do that he had to do for himself was banished from his evolutionary biological program. That means the more nature does what man used to do, the more man will feel natural as a being. The more technology does what nature used to do, man will feel unnatural. So I am saying right now, me and you, we can go outside and we see trees and grass. But there may be a time in the children 120 years from now, if we're ignorant, there could be a parallel potential that in history books you see the images of trees. You're like, wow, there once were trees. You know, now we see the trees. You know, we are like the pioneer stage. So to get to the final question, Is existence simulated experientially? If experience is awareness and existence is the self, and the process of being alive is just self-awareness, an oscillation between thinking the self is projecting the awareness, and an oscillation between this attributeless unknown awareness projecting the self. So that means you can in any moment feel the unknown. So you are holding yourself in your knowledge. You are inhabiting how language has added dimensions of meaning to your reality. For me, there's a silence that the poet Rumi says this language is, silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation. And this dude was a poet that wrote a lot of poetry, a lot. He just wrote a lot for a human being. So anyways, guys, I feel that we have to, um, oh, I never finished that thing I wanted to say about nationalism. Pretty much, I was looking at this problem, like as if imagine like you're sitting at your table, you know, like your study, and somebody comes in, puts out a sheet of paper, and on it it says like, how do we fix this problem of nationalism? And is it even a problem, or what is the off part of it? And so when we look at nationalism, first of all, we got to understand that no political system will be as up to date as its most up to date citizen. So, regardless of how the political system behaves, so many people's viewpoints are not being considered. So, for us to just think of directing politics to, how can I tell you? Let me tell you, politics, the political system is behind, but not the politicians. And that's why great politicians are like ahead of their time. Do you know they're doing things ahead of the how old the system is? Do you know? So you can say a great politician is not just a great personality, but is someone who looks at the political system, and as they entered the political system suddenly vitalized. And when they leave out, people can see how different it is. That's a great politician, I think. So now check this out. So I was thinking of, you can't take away nationalism. You can't suddenly go to, a person from a certain culture and say, your culture doesn't exist, man, because we're all one humanity. That person will be like, get out of here. you know? It's so my solution as a kind of designer looking at the situation was that, okay, we don't touch the old world. We can't change the past, but what we can do is add dimensions. We can't subtract dimensions, because you can say all ideology, let's say even a silly ideology. Imagine somebody says, like, when I believe that a glass of orange juice is the truth, I get energized, especially after I drink it. So every time I drink orange juice, it's a divine moment. Now that person, you can say, all right, bro, you're drinking too much orange juice, man. You could say different things to that person, but you see that idea, you can't take it away if the person's inner realms are holding it. So we can really never change people, because what changes about the person is what that person chooses to look at. Okay? So I'm saying that it's like when we look at nationalism, it's tribes. It's the Hunger Games, isn't it? Economical Hunger Games. So what is it? It's literally different tribes. So I was thinking, how do we get all these tribes to suddenly feel united? And then I realized they have to become members. They have to become members. So all nations, we don't change them. The only thing we change about all nations is we put the word sub dash in front of it. So it would be something like, I'll type it here. So that was my strategy. I'm like, okay, all nations can be like, all right, we don't have to change, but we can become part of something where suddenly it might solve all our problems. And then, so now check this out. What is that membership? What are they? What are they sub nations of? I realize that we have to take the wisdom of Buckminster Fuller and not George, Alfred. What I'll say Whitehead. A whitehead. No, I'm joking. Alfred Whitehead. He says life is a process. It's not just meaningless particles. They asked Buckminster Fuller, "What is God?" He said, "It is not a noun. It is not a noun. It is a verb. So I can't tell you." So do you see? Do you see the greater? These are all nations become sub-nations of civilization 2.0, of the advanced nation, a nation that is always in progress at the highest speed. Do you know? That means imagine in the future where we get this going. The evolution of attention, of life beyond the form. We are a life form where the life part is evolving the form, the acknowledgement of the form. Oh man, this chat section is getting out of control. I can tell you this, guy, the world moves in many ways. And when a person attempts different things in different states of mind, the person has to maintain it, and eventually they will see that, like, my vision to writing books. This is how Mr. Within writes books, guys. So I'm telling you, what you do is, I remember I wrote a ridiculous amount of books, getting close to 30 each, with like above 100,000 words or something. You know, some of them I think less, but like, a majority above 100,000 words. And the way I managed to do it was that I thought, I sat down and I'm like, how long did it take for the guy to write Da Vinci Code? It took him 3 years. And I was like, okay, so like I can just try to write one book and try to finish one book. Then I thought, okay, what if I write in a year, which is 365 days, one page of as many books I like, as I want. And so by the end of a year, I have written 365 pages of whatever amount of books. Do you see what I'm saying? Imagine, guys, a reality where people didn't even have to give you money. You had all the resources you needed. What would you do when you're in heaven? That's the question. When you know the answer to that, then it doesn't bother you how life goes. It's kind of like an experiential stability, regardless of how the subjects and objects and as the content of the moment change. Anyways, guys, I don't know. I hope in this talk, um, you've been able to kind of realize how nature is walking alongside us in various unknown ways. And the whole point of exploration is not to destroy nature to understand nature, but to simply see how we're standing under the phenomenon. Sometimes life, there's no instruction. You have to pilot. That means you are this energetic. You're this given energy that's conscious of itself. You appear in your conscious waking state, and you have an ability to move your attention on any idea, any form. Now, regardless of all the inner landscapes that a person can hold, regardless of how many ways, there's this, they say that there's a certain state of mind. It's kind of like like a certain ability the yogi would get, where the yogi would access his universal memory, then their whole personalities would seem otherworldly. And what that means is they have suddenly realized they are not everything, but they have simultaneously also realized they are not nothing. So when you're not a form, the fear of form evaporates, is not there. And when you, in some sense, feel you are, how can I tell you, formless, the form is an infinite tool. So, anyways, guys, I would encourage anybody who wants to. I kind of think of like when a human being is born, based on how much they communicate, it's kind of like a ship, okay? It's like a moment, right? So I've kind of created, I'm trying to create a community where, like, eventually it becomes a sort of collective project, do you know? So anybody who's interested to kind of uh, be present alongside my mind on a day-to-day basis, feel free to join the School of Athens 2.0, you know? Uh, anyways, when your eyes walk like nature, before fear existed, the spirit of continuity was change. They asked Plato, what time is it? He said, time is the moving image of eternity, you know? And the guy's like, come on, Plato, just say you don't know what time it is. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope this episode was helpful. Much blessings and namaste.